Hi everyone and welcome back to Inktober Tangles 2025. I'm Martha and I'm going to be leading you through day 23, which is the Qurtuba tangle. As always, I'll be showing you two variations of this tangle. We'll start simple on a bijou tile and then move on to something a little bit more elaborate. To begin, I'll be using a Pigma Micron black pen size 01, and I'll be drawing two diagonal lines from one corner of a bijou tile across to the other corner. Next to those lines, I am drawing another line, so it's like a little border. Between these two lines, I'm drawing a wavy line, and they look kind of like little hills. And I do suggest trying to get at least two of these little hills in there. So you can see how I have two that touch the top line and one, a valley that goes down and touches the other side. I'm going to start down in that valley first, that's in the middle of the tile, and I'm going to loop around into a spiral. Make sure that that spiral touches that top line. And then if you have another valley on your tile, go ahead and do another spiral in that space like I have, again, making sure that that spiral touches that top line. I'm now going to turn the tile upside down so that I can draw spirals inside of those valleys. And notice how my spirals, again, start from the valley, go up to the top line, and then spiral around. So I'm starting at the side of that little valley, going up, and then spiraling around, and then ending with a little orb or a little seed pod. Now turn your tile so that you're at the side of that spiral where that little crevice, there's a little crevice where the spiral meets that line, and we're going to draw three little loops or teardrop shapes. And then I'm going to do the same thing to my other two spirals. So that one, just drawing what I can over there. Just a little tidbit, notice that the spirals go different directions, but all of these little teardrops are all kind of pointing in the same direction. That kind of took me a second to catch on to, but just FYI. I'm going to add a few little details inside of each of those little teardrops, just a little flick of a line in the center of each. I'm now going to round out any kind of crevice or point where lines meet by just adding a little bit of a curved line, and do that all throughout the tangle. And I just uh, I want to apologize, but I also don't want to apologize. If you hear any background noise today, I am actually sitting outside on my back porch enjoying the lovely weather, so there might be some squirrels rustling around and some birds chirping, but after being inside all day, I just needed to enjoy some fresh air. So I thought, why not be outside to do my editing today? I'm filling in those little crevices that I've rounded out with black ink. Next, I'm going to add a few little orbs where that top teardrop is. Well, I guess that one looks like the bottom teardrop. It depends on the orientation of your tangle. But just a little orb next to the three teardrops. For shading, I'm going to come in and add a little bit of graphite in those teardrops. And then also a little graphite in the spirals to just bring out their roundness. And then taking a tortillon and blending that in just to soften up that graphite. And then also adding a little shading. Tangle seemed a little light, so adding a little bit of shading outside the edge of the border to add a little bit more gray to this. All right, and there we go. That's the simple version of the Curtuba tangle. And again, we are on day 23, so filling out this information. So if I need to reference the name of the tangle later, I will know what I have drawn. For a more complex version of this tangle, I'm going to be using a Renaissance tile, and I'm going to start by adding 4 corners and then connecting to create a border. I'm now going to divide up that center section into 4 different squares or 4 quadrants. So just drawing a line across the middle going both directions. I've switched to a Pigma Micron brown pen in size 05, and I'm going to start at the middle of the outside edge and spiral around, touching the top of that square and the left side of that square. Okay, turning my tile and starting at the bottom, drawing up to the top and out to the left side, and then spiraling around, and then a little orb on the inside. Starting at the bottom, spiraling up to the top and left sides, and a little orb. And then the final one, the same thing. Next, it's time to add those teardrop shapes. If you're familiar with the flux tangle, it is very much that same shape. And I'm going to add a few more little teardrops than just the 3 that were done on the first version of this tangle. And I'm continuing around until all 4 of the spirals have these little teardrops coming out of that little crevice. And then adding a nice size orb up on that top little teardrop shape. In this inside section, I wish that the lines were all touching, but they're not, and that's okay. I'm still going to aura this diamond shape, this curved diamond shape. And then I'm going to aura it one more time. And I'm going to color that space between the auras with solid ink. And inside of that space, I'm going to fill with orbs. So just fill it all up, really close together. Mine are mostly the same size, but there's a few smaller ones in some of the smaller areas. And then I'm going to go in with the pen and fill in that kind of negative space around the orbs so that it's solid and kind of blends in with that border. Inside those teardrop shapes, or the shapes that look like the flux tangle, I'm adding a little bit of a detail with a line and then maybe a couple of little dots. Just depends on the size of the teardrop. So the bigger ones I'm adding 2 or 3, and then the smaller ones maybe just 1 dot. And also filling in that negative space with some brown ink. And I'm going to do that to all of those teardrop shapes. I'm now coming in and rounding out the corners with a little bit of a curve and then filling in that section with ink. And then continuing that around to all the 4 areas. I'm now coming in with a white charcoal pencil and adding just a bit of a highlight to these smaller shapes. And then also adding some to the spiral to bring out the roundness of it. And these orbs here in the center are getting a little chalk as well. Because this tangle is much bigger than the first one, it has a lot of empty space. So I'm going back in with the white charcoal pencil first to the outside edge of the spiral and being pretty heavy-handed with the chalk. And the blending in with the tortillon really does help kind of lighten up this tile. And I'm now coming in with my graphite pencil and adding a little bit of some shading. So I'm coming around this outside edge where the border was first drawn, and then I'm also adding a little bit around those little teardrops. And there's a little bit being added here in that center area. To blend out those smaller areas, I want my tortillon to be a little bit more precise. So I'm taking a paper clip to extend the tip to a smaller tip. It was a little too broad, and this will help me get these little tiny areas like right in there. Looking at the tile, it seemed a little empty, and so I decided to come back into those empty spaces and add a little aura. So kind of a shark fin shape that fills in that inner space. And to create some continuity in the tile, I'm going to do that same orb in the center area here as I did in the center of the tile. So filling in these spaces with a variety of orbs. I drew a few bigger ones in this section. So just smushing them in there, all close together, like gumballs in a gumball machine. And then coloring in that negative space with some ink. And I think this looks a lot better with those filled in. All right, adding a little charcoal to those orbs. Not all of them, but the bigger ones for sure. And then, of course, blending those in with the tortillon. And I'm also coming back in with the graphite pencil and adding a little bit of shading around those shark fin shapes to add a little depth there. And there we go, a lovely version of the Curtuba Tangle on a Renaissance tile with brown ink and some white charcoal and graphite pencil. I'm going to go ahead and fill out the back information as I always do. And that's a wrap on day 23. Thank you again for joining me. This was a new tangle for me to learn and to teach, and I had a great time doing so. Thank you again for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Have a good one.